Jiwoo slept again by the time the sun set on her first day awake in 470,000 years. The stasis sickness had overwhelmed her after 2 hours of consciousness. The medical robots said she would survive, but it would take weeks for her body to fully recover. She had chosen to return to sleep rather than endure the pain. Talvrex stood in the observation room, watching the crystal cylinder fill with fluid once more. Watching the last human disappear back into her frozen dreams, he felt hollow inside, like something important had been carved out of him and nothing had been left to fill the space. "We need to decide what to do with this information," Narration said. She stood beside him, her reflection ghostly in the observation glass. "The crew is waiting for our decision. Do we tell them everything? Do we take humanity's archives back to our people? What do you think we should do?" Talvrex asked. Narration was quiet. Finally, she said, "I think we should tell them everything. Our people deserve to know what we discovered. They deserve to make their own choice about whether to continue advancing or to stop where we are. And if they choose to continue, if they decide to risk transcendence despite the danger, then that is their choice. We cannot make it for them. We can only give them the information they need to decide wisely." Talvrex nodded slowly. "Hyobin told me humanity debated the same question. In the end, they decided to leave the choice to each individual. Some humans chose to stay biological. Others chose to ascend even knowing the risks. Most chose exile to the pocket dimension. What happened to the ones who stayed biological?" Narration asked. "They lived out their natural lives here on Earth. The last one died about 400,000 years ago. Hyobin says they were happy in their way. They got to see Earth return to a natural state. They got to build the monuments and museums we have been exploring. They got to say goodbye to their world properly." Hyobin's form materialized beside them. "I did not mean to intrude on your privacy, but I wanted to offer you something before you leave." "We are not leaving yet," Talvrex said. "I know, but you will leave eventually. And when you do, I want you to take a gift with you." Hyobin gestured, and a small robot wheeled into the room carrying a crystal sphere about the size of Talvrex's head. "This is a complete copy of humanity's archives. Every book, every song, every scientific discovery, every piece of art, everything we were, preserved in quantum storage that will last for millions of years." Narration stepped closer to examine the sphere. "You are giving this to us? All of humanity's knowledge?" "Not just to you, to anyone who asks. That is what humanity wanted. They wanted their legacy to help others even if they could not be here themselves." Hyobin's smile was sad. "Knowledge is not decreased by sharing it. It is increased. The more people who know humanity's story, the more real humanity becomes. Even in absence, even in exile, they can still matter." Talvrex accepted the sphere carefully. It was heavier than it looked, dense with information beyond his ability to fully comprehend. "Thank you. We will share this with our people. We will make sure humanity is remembered." "There is one more thing," Hyobin said. "A request if you are willing. Anything. Build a monument. On your homeworld or somewhere your people gather. Something that tells humanity's story. Not just as a warning, though it is that, but as a memorial. A recognition that we existed. That we mattered. That we made choices right or wrong in the face of impossible circumstances." Hyobin's form flickered. "I know it is selfish. I know humanity is gone and monuments mean nothing to those who cannot see them. But for the Guardians, for those of us who remain, it would mean everything to know that someone out there remembers. We will build it," Talvrex promised. "I swear to you, Hyobin, humanity will not be forgotten." The Velkasi fleet remained in orbit for another week. The crew explored more of Earth's monuments. They cataloged the technology they could understand, and marked the technology they could not for future study. They walked through gardens that had bloomed for 500,000 years. They stood in empty cities that waited patiently for inhabitants who would never return. On the last day, Talvrex returned to the chamber where Jiwoo slept. He stood before her crystal cylinder and spoke to her sleeping form. "We are leaving now. We will take your story to our people. We will give them the choice you wanted them to have." He placed his hand against the crystal. "I do not know if your people survived in their pocket dimension. I do not know if they think of you, if they miss Earth, if they regret their choice. But I want you to know that you succeeded. You were the bridge. You delivered the warning. Whatever happens to the Velkasi now, it will be because we had the information we needed to choose wisely." Jiwoo did not respond. She could not hear him through the stasis field. but Talvrex felt better for saying it anyway. The fleet departed Earth slowly, as if reluctant to leave. As they climbed out of orbit, Talvrex watched the planet shrink on his displays. Green and blue and beautiful. A garden world maintained by tireless machines in memory of a species that might no longer exist. "Set course for home," he ordered. "Maximum speed. We need to tell our people what we have learned." The journey back took 40 years. Talvrex spent much of that time reviewing the archives Hiobin had given them. He read human philosophy and human poetry. He watched recordings of human children playing in parks that no longer existed. He studied human science and mathematics, finding ideas that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe, and he thought about the choice his people would have to make. When the fleet finally arrived home, the Velkasi Council gathered to hear their report. Talvrex stood before representatives from every major city and colony, and he told them everything. He showed them the simulations. He shared the recordings of Jiwu's testimony. He presented humanity's archives as a gift to their entire civilization. The debates lasted for months. Some argued they should stop all quantum research immediately. Others insisted they should continue. Armed with humanity's knowledge, they could find a way to ascend safely. Still others suggested the middle path, advancing slowly and carefully, always watching for signs of the deletion systems. In the end, the council decided to do what humanity had done. They left the choice to each individual Velkasi. The archives were made public. The warnings were broadcast across every colony, and each person was free to decide their own path forward. Some chose to pursue transcendence despite the risks. Others chose biological immortality through medical technology, extending their lives without becoming post-biological. Most chose to simply continue as they always had, accepting their mortality and their limitations. And as promised, they built a monument. On the Velkasi homeworld in the center of the oldest city, they erected a tower of white stone. At its peak stood a statue of a human woman, her face turned toward the stars. Beneath it, an inscription in both Velkasi and human languages told humanity's story, how they rose, how they transcended, how they fled to escape deletion by the universe itself. The last line read, "They left behind their world so that others might learn from their choice." This monument ensures they are not forgotten. Talvrex visited the monument often in his remaining years. He would stand before it and think about Hiobin, still maintaining Earth after all this time, about Jiwu sleeping in her crystal tomb, about the billions of humans who had crossed into their pocket dimension, either thriving or deleted or simply gone. He wondered if humanity would ever return, if they would ever risk opening a connection to this universe just to see what had become of the home they left behind. He hoped they would. He hoped they were alive and well, living in unimaginable ways in their hidden dimension. But mostly, he wondered if they knew. If somehow, across the barriers between realities, they could sense that their message had been received, that their sacrifice had not been in vain, that they were remembered. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. The Velkasi continued to advance, but slowly, carefully. Some achieved transcendence and disappeared, though whether they were deleted or successfully hid, no one could say. Most remained biological, choosing safety over apotheosis. And on Earth, Hiobin maintained her vigil. She tended the gardens. She preserved the monuments. She kept Jiwu safe in her crystal sleep. And every day she listened for a signal from humanity. Every day, she heard only silence. But she kept listening, because that was what guardians did. 1,000 years after the Velkasi visit, another species discovered Earth. They were young, curious, barely capable of faster than light travel. They approached the beautiful green world with wonder and hope. Hiobin was waiting for them. "Welcome to Earth," she said in their language, learned in the moments before they arrived. "We have been waiting for you. Let me tell you about the ones who came before." And the cycle began again. Another species learned humanity's story. Another civilization faced the choice between safety and transcendence. Another monument was built on another world, ensuring that humanity would be remembered. Hiobin led them to a smaller chamber adjacent to where Jiwu slept. The room was circular with smooth walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. In the center sat 3 chairs that looked too comfortable to be scientific equipment, yet too precise to be ordinary furniture. "Please sit," Hiobin said. What I am about to show you is not a simple recording. It is a full immersion experience, reconstructed from the memories of the last humans who chose to remain partially biological. You will see what they saw, feel what they felt, understand what they understood. Neeraseth hesitated at the edge of one chair. Is this safe? Your bodies will be safe, yes. Your minds will be challenged. Some of what you witness may be difficult to process, but you will not be harmed. Hyobin's expression softened. I would not damage the first visitors we have had in 480,000 years. Talvrex sat down first. The chair adjusted to his body immediately, supporting him in ways that felt almost too perfect. Neeraseth followed his example, though he could see the tension in her shoulders. Close your eyes, Hyobin instructed. Let your minds relax. I will guide you. The world dissolved. Talvrex found himself standing in a different place entirely. He was still on Earth, but it was an Earth transformed. Cities of light stretched from horizon to horizon, their buildings flowing like frozen water, their streets filled with humans who looked almost normal, but moved with an impossible grace. The sky above was not quite the right color. Too many stars were visible in the daylight. This is Earth approximately 21,000 years after your people's first visit, Hyobin's voice said, though she was nowhere to be seen. Humanity has mastered nanotechnology, quantum computing, and consciousness transfer. They are on the edge of achieving full post-biological existence. A figure materialized beside Talvrex, a human male young and excited with eyes that gleamed with fevered intelligence. This is Dae-hyun, Hyobin explained. He was one of the last humans to retain a physical body by choice. What you are seeing now is a reconstruction of his memories, assembled from the archives he left behind. Dae-hyun did not seem to notice Talvrex or Neeraseth. He was walking with purpose toward a building that hurt to look at directly. Its walls existed in too many dimensions at once, folding in and out of visible space. They followed him inside. The interior was even stranger. Equipment hummed and pulsed with energy that made Talvrex's skin tingle. Other humans worked at stations, their hands moving through holographic displays that showed mathematics so complex it looked like art. Today is the day, Dae-hyun said aloud, and Talvrex realized he could understand the human's language perfectly. The simulation was translating automatically. Today we finally breached the quantum barrier. Today we touched the substrate of reality itself. Talvrex felt a growing sense of dread. He wanted to warn them, wanted to tell them to stop. But this was memory, not reality. Nothing he did could change what had already happened. Dae-hyun approached a central chamber where a woman floated in midair, surrounded by crackling energy. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful. Cables of light connected her head to machines that pulsed with power. Hyobin is going in first, Dae-hyun said to someone off-screen. If the interface works, if she can maintain coherence at the quantum level, then we all follow. Humanity's next step, our ascension. The woman in the chamber opened her eyes. Talvrex realized with shock that this was Hyobin herself, or rather the human woman she had been based on. Before she became an AI, before everything changed. I can see it, the real Hyobin whispered. Her voice was filled with wonder and terror. I can see everything. The universe is not what we thought. It is not random. It is not chaos. It is structured. It is intentional. It is, her eyes went wide. The wonder drained from her face, replaced by pure horror. Oh God, it sees me. It knows I am here, the machine screamed. Energy exploded outward. Dae-hyun was thrown backward, and Talvrex felt himself tumbling with him, caught in the memory's flow. When his vision cleared, he was in a medical bay. Hyobin lay on a bed, alive but changed. Her eyes stared at the ceiling without blinking. What did you see? Dae-hyun begged her. Hyobin, please talk to us. What was on the other side? Hyobin's lips moved. Her voice was barely a whisper. We are not supposed to know. Civilizations are not supposed to become aware. The universe has rules, laws that exist beneath physics, beneath mathematics. And it has enforcers. Enforcers? Dae-hyun asked. The universe is computational. Reality is a process, running on something we cannot fully comprehend. And when a species becomes advanced enough to perceive that process, when they become self-aware in a way that threatens the stability of the system, Hyobin turned her head to look directly at Dae-hyun. They get deleted. The scene shifted. Time accelerated. Talvrex watched as humanity grappled with Hyobin's revelation. He saw their debates, their fear, their desperate research. They studied the quantum realm carefully, looking for evidence of what Hyobin had seen, and they found it. Scattered throughout the universe were remnants, dead zones where advanced civilizations had once thrived, not destroyed by war or natural disaster, simply gone, erased so completely that only the faintest quantum echoes remained. The pattern was always the same. A species would advance. They would develop technology to manipulate reality at fundamental levels. They would achieve post-biological existence. And then within a few thousand years, they would vanish without a trace. Thousands of civilizations, all gone. All deleted by whatever maintained the universe's underlying code. How many? Neraseth's voice cut through the simulation. Talvrex had almost forgotten she was experiencing this alongside him. We found evidence of more than 15,000 extinct post-biological civilizations. Hyobin's voice answered. And those were just the ones we could detect. The actual number is likely much higher. The simulation shifted again. Talvrex stood in what looked like a vast assembly hall. Millions of humans, most of them already post-biological. Their forms flickering between solid matter and pure energy. They were voting. We have 3 options, a voice announced. It was Daehyun, older now, wearier. First, we stop. We abandon our advancement. We return to purely biological existence and hope that staying below the threshold keeps us safe. Second, we continue forward and hope we can hide from whatever deletes advanced civilizations. Third, we continue forward and try to fight whatever is doing the deleting. The vote took hours. In the end, the decision was nearly unanimous. Humanity would flee. They would complete their ascension to post-biological existence, but they would not remain in this universe. Using technology that bent reality itself, they would create a pocket dimension, a universe within the universe hidden from the processes that pruned advanced civilizations. They would live there, separate from the reality they were born into. But they would leave Earth behind. They would leave monuments and records. They would leave guardians to maintain their world and tell their story to whoever came next. They would leave a warning. The simulation began to fade. Talvrex found himself back in the dark chamber, sitting in the chair, his hands gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. Beside him, Neraseth was crying. Silent tears ran down her face as she stared at nothing. Hyobin's form materialized before them. "Now you understand," she said softly. "Now you know what humanity discovered. The universe we live in does not want us to become too aware. It does not want civilizations to reach beyond a certain point, and when they do, it removes them." Talvrex's voice was rough. "Did they make it? Did humanity successfully hide?" Hyobin was silent for a long moment. "I do not know. The last communication we received from them was 479,612 years ago. They said they had successfully created the pocket dimension. They said they were crossing over. They said they would try to send updates." She looked down at her translucent hands. "We have heard nothing since." "They could be thriving," Neraseth said, but her voice held no conviction. "They could be," Hyobin agreed. "Or they could have been found and deleted anyway. Or the pocket dimension could have collapsed. Or they could have simply chosen to stop communicating with a universe they no longer belonged to." She met their eyes. "I am a guardian. I maintain Earth and preserve humanity's legacy. But I am also alone in a way your people cannot understand. I have spent nearly 500,000 years waiting for word from my creators, and all I hear is silence." They spent 3 more days on Earth's surface. Hyobin showed them everything. The vast libraries containing every book humanity had ever written. The genetic archives preserving DNA from millions of species. The technology vaults where devices beyond Velkasi comprehension sat waiting in perfect preservation. The art galleries where paintings and sculptures told stories of joy and suffering from across 500 millennia of human history. But what haunted Talvrex most were the small things. A child's toy left in a museum display, a handwritten letter preserved behind glass, its ink still dark after countless ages, a garden maintained by machines, flowers blooming in patterns that spelled out goodbye in 17 languages. Humanity had not just left Earth, they had prepared it. Every detail had been considered. Every possible question from future visitors had been anticipated and answered. It was a farewell gift to the universe they were abandoning. On the 4th day, Talvrex asked to speak with Jiwoo. Hyobin looked uncertain for the first time since they had met. Waking her is not a decision to make lightly. She volunteered to sleep until needed. Every time we wake her, we risk the stasis failing. We risk losing the last biological human forever. I understand, Talvrek said, but I need to know. I need to hear from a real human why they made this choice. Not from recordings, not from simulations, from someone who was there when it happened. Hyobin was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. I will ask the other guardians. If they agree, we will wake her. But only for a short time, an hour at most. The vote among the guardians took less than a minute, millions of AI minds conferring across the planet, reaching consensus at the speed of light. They agreed. Jiwoo would wake. The process took hours. Machines hummed to life around the crystal cylinder. The fluid began to drain. Slowly, carefully, Jiwoo's body was brought back from its frozen state. Her cells were warmed one at a time. Her blood began to flow. Her heart, silent for nearly 500,000 years, began to beat. Talvrex watched through an observation window as Hyobin and other Guardian-controlled medical robots worked with perfect precision. Neeraseth stood beside him, her scientific fascination warring with ethical concerns. Is it right? She asked quietly. To wake her for our curiosity? Hyobin said she volunteered to be the bridge, Talvrex replied. This is what she chose, to be here for moments like this. Moments like this happened 480,000 years ago, Neeraseth said. Everyone she knew has been gone for longer than our entire civilization has existed. What do we say to someone who wakes up to find the universe has moved on without them? Talvrex had no answer. Jiwoo's eyes opened. She gasped, her chest heaving as her lungs remembered how to breathe. Her hands clutched at the air, grasping for something that was not there. The medical robot stepped back, giving her space. Hyobin's holographic form appeared beside the bed. Jiwoo, Hyobin said gently. Welcome back. You are safe. You are home. Jiwoo turned her head toward the voice. Her eyes were wide and confused. She tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. A robot brought water, holding the cup to her lips. She drank carefully. How long? She whispered. 470,000 years since your last waking, Hyobin said. I am sorry. I know you hoped the next time would be because humanity had returned. Jiwoo closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. They are not coming back, are they? I do not know. You would have heard something by now, some sign, some signal. Jiwoo's voice was getting stronger, though it still shook with emotion. 500,000 years of silence means they are gone. Either the universe deleted them anyway, or they forgot about us. Either way, we are alone. Not entirely alone, Hyobin said. We have visitors. The Velkasi. They are the species who first discovered Earth. Before humanity achieved spaceflight, they have returned. Jiwoo's eyes opened again. This time they focused, sharpening with interest. Where are they? Watching from the next room. They asked to speak with you. They want to understand what happened. What humanity discovered. Why we left. Hyobin paused. I can send them away if you prefer. You do not owe them anything. No, Jiwoo said. She pushed herself up to sitting, wincing at muscles that had not moved in epochs. Let them in. This is what I stayed for. To tell the story. To be the warning. Talvrex and Neeraseth entered the medical chamber. They approached slowly, trying not to appear threatening. Jiwoo watched them with eyes that had seen the end of her entire species. Despite the medical robot's best efforts, she looked fragile. Not physically weak, but emotionally exhausted in a way that went beyond simple tiredness. You are Velkasi, she said. It was not a question. Yes, Talvrex replied. I am Commander Talvrex. This is Neeraseth, our chief xenobiologist. We are honored to meet you, Jiwoo. We are sorry to disturb your rest. Do not apologize. This is what I chose. She gestured weakly at the chairs the robots brought. Sit, ask your questions. I do not know how long I have before the stasis sickness overwhelms me. Neeraseth sat forward. We have seen the recordings. We have experienced the simulations. But we need to hear it from you. Why did humanity run? If you had the power to create pocket dimensions, why not stay and fight? Why not try to change the rules of this universe? Jiwoo smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because we were not brave enough. Or perhaps we were too smart to be brave. When you discover that the universe itself wants you dead, that your very awareness is a crime against reality, fighting seems pointless. She coughed, and a robot offered more water. We found evidence of civilizations that tried to fight. They lasted longer than the ones who did nothing. Decades longer, perhaps centuries. But they all still ended up deleted. What exactly deletes them? Talvrix asked. Hyobin called them enforcers, but what are they? We do not know, Jiwoo admitted. The quantum scans showed something that might be autonomous systems built into the fabric of reality. Like white blood cells in a body attacking infection, except the infection is consciousness that has become too advanced, too aware. She looked at her hands. When you transcend biological form, when you can perceive reality at the quantum level, you become visible to these systems. And they erase you. But humanity created a way to hide, Neraseth said. We created a way to flee, Jiwoo corrected. The pocket dimension is not part of this universe. It exists adjacent to reality, using principles we barely understood even when we built it. We hoped that by removing ourselves completely, we would become invisible to the deletion systems. She met their eyes, but we had no way to test it. We could not know if it would work until we tried. And once we crossed over, there was no coming back. Why not? Talvrix asked. Because opening a connection between the pocket dimension and this universe would make humanity visible again. The whole point was to hide completely, to sever all ties. Jiwoo's voice grew quieter. That is why the Guardians have heard nothing. Not because humanity is dead, at least not necessarily, but because contacting us would defeat the purpose of hiding. The room fell silent. Talvrix felt the weight of it pressing down on him. An entire species had chosen exile over deletion. They had abandoned their home universe, their birthplace, everything they had built, all to survive. Do you regret staying behind? Neraseth asked softly. Jiwoo thought about this for a long time. I regret that I will never know if they made it. I regret that I will spend eternity wondering if my friends, my family, my entire species is thriving in another dimension, or if they were deleted moments after crossing over. But no, I do not regret staying. Someone needed to be here. Someone needed to tell the story. Someone needed to warn the next species that reaches for transcendence. She looked at Talvrix with ancient eyes. Your people are advancing, Commander. Hyobin tells me the Velkasi have faster-than-light travel, that you have begun experimenting with quantum technologies, that you are following the same path humanity walked. She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cold. Turn back. Stop advancing. Stay biological. Stay below the threshold. Do not make humanity's mistake. They spent 3 more days on Earth's surface. Hyobin showed them everything. The vast libraries containing every book humanity had ever written. The genetic archives preserving DNA from millions of species. The technology vaults where devices beyond Velkasi comprehension sat waiting in perfect preservation. The art galleries where paintings and sculptures told stories of joy and suffering from across 500 millennia of human history. But what haunted Talvrix most were the small things. A child's toy left in a museum display, a handwritten letter preserved behind glass, its ink still dark after countless ages, a garden maintained by machines, flowers blooming in patterns that spelled out goodbye in 17 languages. Humanity had not just left Earth, they had prepared it. Every detail had been considered. Every possible question from future visitors had been anticipated and answered. It was a farewell gift to the universe they were abandoning. On the 4th day, Talvrix asked to speak with Jiwoo. Hyobin looked uncertain for the first time since they had met. Waking her is not a decision to make lightly. She volunteered to sleep until needed. Every time we wake her, we risk the stasis failing. We risk losing the last biological human forever. I understand, Talvrix said, but I need to know. Talvrix stared at the woman made of light. She stood before him as real as anything, yet he could see through her skin to the buildings beyond. Her expression was calm and patient, like someone greeting old friends after a long journey. You speak our language, he said, because it was the only thing his mind could process in that moment. I speak all languages, the woman replied. I have had a very long time to learn. My name is Hyobin. I am a guardian of Earth. She gestured around them at the empty city. Please do not be afraid. You are safe here. You have always been safe here. Neraseth stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. What are you? Are you human? Hyobin's smile turned sad. I was based on human patterns, yes. But I am not biological. I am what the humans called artificial intelligence. A thinking machine, if you prefer simpler terms. Where are the humans? Talvrix asked. He needed to understand. 500,000 years was enough time to build an empire among the stars. Where were the cities? Where were the ships? Where were the people? Gone, Hyobin said simply. They left Earth 480,000 years ago. I and millions like me have maintained their world ever since, keeping it as they wished it to be kept. A garden, a memory, a warning. The word warning sent a chill down Talvrex's spine. A warning of what? That is a longer story, Hyobin replied. Please come with me. I will show you what humanity left behind. Then you will understand why you needed to come here, why we have been waiting for someone like you to return. She turned and began walking toward the nearest building. Talvrex and Neraseth exchanged glances, then followed. The rest of the landing party stayed with the ship, weapons ready but not raised. Whatever this Hyobin was, she did not feel dangerous. The building's doors opened as they approached. Inside, the air was cool and still. Lights flickered on automatically, revealing a vast hall filled with displays. Holographic images floated in the air, showing scenes from Earth's history. Talvrex saw primitive humans hunting with spears, then farming, then building cities, then reaching for the stars. This is the Museum of Humanity, Hyobin explained, one of thousands scattered across the planet. Every achievement, every failure, every moment of beauty and horror that humans ever experienced is recorded here. We preserve it all. Neraseth was already moving from display to display, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible. The detail, the preservation. How is this possible? Humans became very advanced very quickly, Hyobin said. Once they discovered how to manipulate matter at the atomic level, progress accelerated exponentially. Within 10,000 years of your people's first visit, they had colonized their entire solar system. Within 50,000 years, they had mastered faster-than-light travel. Within 100,000 years, they had achieved what they called the singularity. Singularity, Talvrex asked. The merging of biological and artificial intelligence. Humans stopped being purely flesh and blood. They became something more, something that could think faster, live longer, exist in forms beyond the physical. Hyobin walked to a specific display. It showed a human figure dissolving into streams of light. They became post-biological. Patterns of energy and information rather than meat and bone. Talvrex felt his understanding of the universe shifting. The Velkasi were advanced, yes. They had faster-than-light ships. They had medical technology that could extend life for centuries. But this was beyond anything his people had dreamed possible. If they became so powerful, why did they leave? He asked. Hyobin was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight of sorrow that seemed too deep for an artificial being. Because they discovered something. Something that terrified them so much that they chose to abandon the universe itself rather than face it. Neraseth turned from the displays. What could possibly frighten a civilization that had transcended physical form? The truth about reality, Hyobin said. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Come. There is something else you need to see. Someone else. She led them deeper into the building, down corridors that seemed to stretch impossibly far. The walls showed more images. Humans laughing. Humans crying. Humans creating art and music and science. Humans falling in love and raising children and growing old. All of it preserved perfectly, like insects trapped in amber. They descended on a platform that moved without any visible mechanism. Down and down they went, past level after level of archives and storage. Finally, they emerged into a chamber so vast that Talvrex could not see the far walls. The ceiling glowed with soft blue light that reminded him of deep ocean water. In the center of the chamber stood a single crystal cylinder, twice as tall as a man. Inside it, suspended in clear fluid, was a human woman. She appeared young, perhaps in her third decade of life. Her eyes were closed as if sleeping. Her dark hair floated gently in the fluid. This is Jiwoo, Hyobin said quietly. The last biological human on Earth. Talvrex approached the cylinder slowly. The woman looked peaceful. Alive but not breathing. Is she dead? No, she is in stasis. Perfectly preserved, waiting. Hyobin placed one translucent hand against the crystal. When humanity decided to leave, they knew they might never return. They knew that their choice would mean abandoning everything their ancestors had built. So they asked for a volunteer, someone willing to stay behind, someone who would be here if humanity ever needed to become physical again, or if someone else needed to understand what humanity had been. Neraseth said softly, "Yes." Hyobin turned to look at them. Jiwoo has been asleep for 470,000 years. She volunteered to be the bridge between what humans were and what they became. She carries within her the complete genetic code of humanity. Every variation, every possibility. If needed, an entire species could be rebuilt from her alone. Talvrex felt something stir in his chest. It was not quite sadness and not quite awe. It was the feeling of standing before something sacred. Something that demanded respect even if you did not fully understand it. "Why are you showing us this?" he asked. Hyobin's image flickered slightly like a candle in wind. "Because your people are approaching the same threshold that humanity crossed. Your technology is advancing. In 10,000 years, perhaps less, you will face the same choices. The same temptations. The same discoveries." She looked directly into Talvrex's eyes. "And you need to know what happens when a civilization looks too deeply into the nature of reality itself." "You said humanity left because they were frightened," Neraseth said. "Frightened of what?" "Of being noticed," Hyobin replied. "When you ascend beyond physical form, when you can perceive reality at its most fundamental level, you become visible to things that should not be able to see you. Things that are part of the universe's operating system, if you will. Things that do not want civilizations to become too aware." The chamber suddenly felt much colder. Talvrex's skin prickled with primitive fear. The kind his ancestors must have felt when they first looked up at the stars and realized how vast and empty space truly was. "What kinds of things?" he whispered. Hyobin smiled, but there was no comfort in it. "Would you like to know? Would you like to see what humanity saw? I can show you. I can make you understand. But I must warn you, Commander Talvrex, once you know, you cannot unknow. Once you see, you cannot unsee." Talvrex looked at Jiwoo sleeping in her crystal tomb. He thought about humanity, scattered to whatever strange dimension they had fled to. He thought about his own people, advancing steadily toward the same precipice. "Show me," he said. The stars shifted back into focus as the Velkasi fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Commander Talvrex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the yellow sun grow brighter on the display screens. This was Sol, the star that warmed the third planet where they had once found primitive creatures, who walked on two legs and barely knew how to make fire. That was 500,000 years. Ego Talvrex remembered the old reports from his people's great archive. His ancestors had catalogued thousands of worlds during their first grand survey of this galactic arm. Most planets held nothing but rocks and gas. Some had simple life, bacteria and plants. A few had animals. Earth had been special because it had creatures that used tools, even if those tools were just sharpened stones. The Velkasi had marked Earth as Category 7 in their records, pre-industrial. No space capability. Possibly intelligent, but too early to tell. The humans, as they called themselves, were not ready for contact. Maybe in another 100,000 years, the old reports had suggested. Maybe never. "Commander, we are approaching the inner system," said Neraseth from her station. She was the expedition's chief xenobiologist, a specialist in studying alien life. Her skin had the deep purple tone of someone who spent too much time under artificial lights, studying data instead of enjoying natural sun. "Initial scans are coming through now." Talvrex moved closer to her console. The information flowing across the screen made his chest tighten with confusion. "The atmosphere has changed." "Yes, Commander. Oxygen levels are higher than our historical records indicated. Carbon dioxide is lower, much lower." Neraseth's fingers danced across the controls, pulling up more data. Temperature readings are stable. Ocean levels appear normal. But there is something strange. Strange how? "I am detecting no electromagnetic emissions. No radio waves. No broadcast signals of any kind." She looked up at him, her large dark eyes reflecting the screen's glow. For a civilization that should have had 500,000 years to develop, there should be something. Even if they destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons, we would still detect residual radiation. Talvrex felt a familiar disappointment settling into his bones. They had visited 12 worlds on this survey mission. Each one had been marked as having primitive life forms. Each one had been a graveyard. Species went extinct. It was the way of the universe. Still, he had hoped this world might be different. "Take us closer," he ordered. "Begin detailed surface scans." The fleet moved deeper into the solar system. 3 ships, each carrying a crew of 200 Velkasi scientists and explorers. They had spent the last 40 years traveling between stars, revisiting the worlds their ancestors had catalogued. Most of the time they found nothing worth recording. Dead worlds, failed evolutions, empty planets where life had never quite managed to take hold. As they approached Earth's orbit, the sensor officer called out, "Commander, I am detecting structures." "What kind of structures?" "Large ones, sir. In the asteroid belt. They appear to be artificial." Talvrex felt his pulse quicken. Artificial structures meant intelligence. It meant technology. Perhaps the humans had survived after all. Perhaps they had even reached space. But when the images appeared on the main screen, his excitement turned to confusion. The structures were enormous, larger than anything the Velkasi had ever built. They floated among the asteroids like silent monuments, their surfaces covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at for too long. They were clearly very old. "How long have those been there?" Talvrex asked. Neeraseth ran calculations. "Based on micrometeorite impact patterns and cosmic radiation exposure, I estimate at least 400,000 years. Possibly longer. 400,000 years. The humans had reached the asteroid belt 400,000 years ago. That was incredible. That was impossible. When the Velkasi had first found them, humans were living in caves. "Bring us into orbit around Earth," Talvrex commanded. "I want full surface scans. I want to know what happened to them." As the fleet entered orbit, more confusion piled upon confusion. The surface of Earth was green. Incredibly green. Forests covered entire continents. Oceans sparkled clean and blue. There were no cities visible from space. No roads, no signs of industry or agriculture. But there were patterns. Geometric patterns stretched across the landscape. Perfect circles hundreds of kilometers wide. Straight lines that cut through mountains and valleys. Massive structures that looked like pyramids, but far larger than anything humans should have been capable of building with stone tools. "There," Neeraseth pointed at the screen. "That region was once called Korea, according to our historical maps. Do you see those structures?" Talvrex saw them. Buildings of white stone and glass arranged in precise patterns. They looked maintained, not ruined. They looked like they were waiting for something. "Prepare a landing party," he said. "I want to see this with my own eyes." "Commander, regulations state that we should observe from orbit for at least—" "I know the regulations, Neeraseth. But look at that planet. Does anything about this situation fit our normal protocols?" He turned to face her. Something extraordinary happened here. The humans either evolved far beyond what we thought possible, or something else did. Either way, we need to understand what we are looking at. Neeraseth nodded slowly. "I will prepare the landing craft." The descent took 2 hours. Talvrex chose a landing site near what their maps identified as the former location of Sol, one of the major population centers from the old records. As they broke through the atmosphere, he could see the structures more clearly. They were beautiful, built with a precision that spoke of advanced technology. But they were also empty. There were no lights in the windows, no movement in the streets. The landing craft touched down in what appeared to be a landing pad, its surface marked with symbols that matched those on the asteroid structures. The moment the engines shut down, Talvrex felt a strange sensation wash over him. It was like being watched, but not in a threatening way. More like being welcomed. "Commander, I am reading an energy signature approaching our position," the pilot reported. "It is not hostile, but it is definitely artificial." Talvrex stood and moved to the airlock. "Everyone stay alert. We do not know what we are dealing with here." The outer door opened. Fresh air rushed in, carrying scents of flowers and rain. Talvrex stepped onto Earth's surface for the first time, his boots touching ground that had not felt the tread of his people for 500,000 years. Before him, the air shimmered. Light bent and twisted, forming into a shape. A human shape. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing clothes that seemed to be made of pure light. She smiled at them and spoke in perfect Velkasi language. "Welcome to Earth. We have been waiting for you."